Well, it looks like Tua Time began in Miami. Reports today from our sources tell us that after this bye week, Tua Tagovailoa is going to be the starting quarterback going forward. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, another edition of the power moves. I initially did not think that they would put Tua in until they started shitting their pants with Ryan Fitzpatrick. But when I thought about this move, it kind of makes sense. I maybe that going 2 for 2 for 8 yards was enough to get Brian Flores to be like, "This is our guy."
Yeah, I know.
But no, I just think it makes sense because where they sit right now in the AFC East.
Yeah, they're one game out of the lead.
Yeah, Bills look pretty vulnerable. The Patriots look vulnerable. The Jets are absolutely awful. So them making a run for the AFC East, I don't think it's likely. I don't think they will take the AFC East. But I think what they're thinking is like, hey, if we have a legitimate shot, I'd rather do it with our rookie, who's probably better than Ryan Fitzpatrick, and make a run for that playoff spot, especially with that seventh playoff spot now, like in the mix. I think that's what they're thinking is it's like, hey, the AFC East is still open. We've been playing well with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Let's see what we have in the rookie, and let's see if he could take us to potentially either win the AFC East or, make that playoff push with how the AFC is kind of folding right now. That's what I think they're doing, heading into the bye week with Tua.
Yeah.
I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly why they did it. Yeah, I mean, he was going to have to come out sooner or later. It's just weird to see Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's been doing pretty well, just kind of get benched for no reason. But I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick's a good sport about it. Even when he got benched last year, for Josh Rosen, just so Miami could see what they got out of Rosen, he was still cool about it, stayed with the team. And as Ryan Fitzpatrick, you kind of have to understand that you're that kind of stopgap quarterback where Miami's future isn't invested in you, it's invested in this young guy. And Miami wants to see what they got in the young guy. Even if they don't get that first overall pick, Miami has 3 picks in the first round next year. One of those picks is looking like it's going to be like a top 5 pick considering how Houston is playing. So if they have to, although I don't see it happening because I see Trevor Lawrence going to the Jets because they won't win any games. But if Miami has to, they can potentially use those picks to trade up and maybe get a quarterback of the future if they don't see what they like out of Tua. Although it would be weird to see them draft another quarterback so soon. I wouldn't put it past them. I mean, Brian Flores just comes out of nowhere with these decisions, came out of nowhere, deciding to play Tua. What do you think though about his first game being against the Rams? He does have that bye week this week where he doesn't have to, or where he can have more time to prepare, but he's preparing for arguably the best defensive lineman and best cornerback in the league. How do you think he'll perform against the Rams?
It'll be interesting. I think him starting with the Rams will be a good test for him because they're middle of the pack defense. Even with Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, they don't really scare you much with all their other guys. So I think it'll be a good test for him because it's not like the Jets where it's like a complete wash and like everybody looks good against the Jets. I think it's a good test for him to be like, I think it's even more of a confident boost if he goes out and beats a Rams team who, in all honesty, the only team that they beat, because they beat on the NFC East, who is absolutely, I think NFC East in total has 4 wins. I think so. Yeah, so the Rams haven't really beat anybody good. They kept up with Buffalo, and they should have won despite all that. But regardless, they kept up with Buffalo, and they haven't looked good all season. Even though their record kind of indicates they have. But in reality, they only beat bottom feeders in the NFL. So I think it's a good test for him, even though, like, for instance, they're a middle of the pack team, but they do have Jalen Ramsey and they do have Aaron Donald, the guys you have to account for. So I think it's a good enough test to see, like, oh, hey, can he keep up with actual stars in the NFL, not just the Jets? And if he does, it's only a boost of confidence of him going forward. And now he has the Jets after them, which he should soundly beat. So I think it's a good test for him and a good decision for Brian Flores to bring him in this week rather than waiting after the bye week to play the Jets, and he has that, just a week to prepare versus 2 weeks to prepare against, middle of the pack defense. So I don't know. I guess we'll see how it is. So if he plays well against the Rams, then I only see him playing well against the Jets, obviously.
Yeah, well, so he does play the Rams, but after that, he actually has the Cardinals, Chargers, and Broncos before he has to face the Jets again.
For some reason I thought they had the Jets
So
right again.
initially, after the bye week, they were going to play the Jets, and then I don't remember who was after that, and then the Jets again. But their bye week got moved up with all the COVID thing happening
Oh,
and all the
okay.
rescheduling. So yeah, it's the Rams, and then Cardinals. I mean, Cardinals looked really good last night against Dallas, but everybody looks good against Dallas.
Right.
Chargers have only won one game, but they've really
Yeah, they've been
been in pretty
competitive.
much all of their
Yeah.
games. Broncos really gave it to New England, so I don't know about how. Yeah, I mean the Cardinals defense last night really forced some turnovers. I think they got Zeke to fumble a couple of times and the Red Rifle to throw a couple picks. I mean, Buda Baker is probably one of the best safeties in the league, and just if they didn't lose Chandler Jones, they probably would have one of those top five defenses maybe. And yeah, I mean, like I said, Chargers have really been in it, so I think this is going to be a great test to see how he can hold up against not the best teams in the NFL, but teams that are doing pretty good. I think.
Yeah, I think yeah. Now that I know that's their schedule, I think it's a good, I guess, lineup to go against, especially if Miami's definitely thinking of trying to make some noise and maybe make some sort of playoff push. If not playoff, like make the playoffs, at least be in the mix, so they're not just playing meaningless football games. And you get to see Tua perform not at the end of the season where the season doesn't matter anymore, not a lot of risk. Um, you get to see him actually perform against like decent teams and kind of when there's some pressure on him to see how he could do in these games that actually mean something now because they're still the AFC East is not completely solidified yet, and
Yeah.
those other teams that are kind of middle of the pack can be competitive games. So I think it's a good move. Like I said in their previous podcast, I'd rather him play and see what they got in him versus him just completely sit the whole year. So I think it's a pretty good decision by Brian Flores, unless it completely blows up in his face, and then everyone's going to be like, "Oh, I knew he wasn't ready."
I mean, if it does blow up in his face, do you think Miami does try to make a push for a cornerback given their draft capital?
I don't think so because most teams don't do that. But even though they should, if that makes sense, because I think a lot of times your
Well, I
quarterback,
mean, the Cardinals did it when they
right?
had Rosen, and then they went with Kyler Murray the next year.
That's what I
But that was
mean.
probably the only time I've seen it.
Right, that's what I mean. Like, but that was also with like a new regime coming in, and they're like, "Rosen's not our guy. We're going with another guy."
True.
That's typically how it happens. It's not usually the same, regime and same coach or like, hey, he's not our guy. Let's go get someone else. Let's give a shot to someone else. But would they have the luxury of doing that with all their first round picks? You know what I mean? So it's like it might not be a bad thing if they get, if one of those quarterbacks falls to them, and they're like, hey, let's take a flyer on him, see what we got, and then maybe we can deal Tua, maybe we can deal this guy, work with like trading him away or something like that. Because usually, if you have a first round pick, you want to give him time, even if he's not showing the capabilities of being a quality starter. You still want to give him time with a better team around him. But you have the luxury of picking another set of players who can help your team along with getting another top tier quarterback. They're almost in a
Yeah.
perfect situation to pick one if they do.
Yeah.
But I mean, personally, I think if your quarterback is not doing well and he's showing signs of like, hey, he might not got it, I wish more players or I wish more coaches and GMs were like, all right, it's a mistake. Let's go and move on and get someone else. But I think a lot of times with GMs and coaches, they're usually tied to the quarterback they pick, and they're in fear of saying it was a mistake and fear of losing their job. And that also comes down to the owner and shit like that. So if they do pick a quarterback, like I said, I think they're in a good position to actually pick one and still get quality players with the other two picks. That if that quarterback doesn't work out or if they trade him or whatever, they still got quality starters with the other two picks.
Right. Yeah, it's actually surprising to see how little coaches are willing to move on from their first quarterback picked. even if, I mean, it sucks to, move on from someone that quick, but it's rare to see a quarterback that struggles in his first year or second year really make that jump going forward into like 3 and 4. But what do you think the future is going to be like with Ryan Fitzpatrick? Do you think he's going to retire? Do you think he's going to stay with Miami or he's going to move on? I believe he's just on a contract till the end of this year.
Yeah, I think he's gonna call it quits at the end of this year. I think this is gonna be his official last ride. I think he knew his last year in the NFL was just that stopgap for Tua, which I think he was totally like from the beginning of the season. Like he came and addressed it. He's like, I know that's why I'm here. Marshawn Lynch status. It was like, I'm here until Tua's the guy, and I'm going to support him once he becomes the guy. I'm going to support him all season. And you saw him on the sidelines when he came in. He was pumping him up and shit like that, which is super cool. So I think he knows that that's all he is in the NFL. He's completely comfortable with that. And I think that's why this season he's been kind of playing loose and kind of just like, knowing that, his numbers of playing days are on the wall. I don't know if I said that right, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I think this is his last year. I think he's officially just having fun this year in Miami with his chest hair out, and then he's done.
Yeah, it's actually crazy to think like any other quarterback, I'd totally agree with you. But with Ryan Fitzpatrick, you don't know because they put up a stat during the game last week where he's the only quarterback to have 5,000 yards, I believe it was, with 3 different teams. And all 3 teams are in the AFC East with the Bills, Jets, and Dolphins. So it would not surprise me one bit if the Cam situation doesn't work out in New England, if he goes up there and just gets another 5,000 yards with New England. Just because I feel like he loves playing football so much and he's just such a fun guy that he's like, yeah, why not just take over an entire conference and be the quarterback that got 5,000 yards with every team in the conference?
Yeah, I mean, he could be that type of guy to just be, just because he loves football that much and loves to have fun or whatever, doesn't really have much pressure on him to succeed because everyone kind of knows who he is, to just keep it going because why doesn't really hurt.
Yeah.
Still collecting a paycheck, still get to do what you do for a living. I could definitely see that, but I just feel like this year when he came in, really like understanding of the role he had in Tua and stuff like that, how accepting he was, almost kind of made me feel like he was like, hey, I'm going to call it quits after this year anyway, so it's all good. But I could definitely see him continuing as much as I see him retiring for sure. You don't really know because he's still got, he's still healthy. He's still got some football in him. It just depends on if anyone wants to pick him up at the end of the season.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it would not surprise me for New England to pull that off either, seeing if, the Cam doesn't work out, that they would, pick up a rookie quarterback and kind of have Fitzpatrick do what he did in Miami and mentor that quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that too. I don't know, but it'd definitely be interesting to see what happens with him. Because every team he's been on, he's at least been successful enough to, be competitive until he fizzles out, I guess.
Yeah. It's crazy that he's actually never made the playoffs before, though.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense, though, for every team he's been on.
Yeah, well, he's kind of been that lead guy on every team, but he's not the franchise quarterback,
Right.
So it makes sense. Thank you for listening in to this clip of the Moose Bros podcast. If you enjoyed this, please like, comment below, and subscribe to this channel to see more clips just like this one. If you want to listen to the whole podcast, you can find us at Spotify or Apple Podcasts under Moose Bros Sports.